My name is Clayton Merrick. I am 67 years old and I have been retired for 4 years. For 32 years, I drove a school bus in Black Hawk County, Iowa, taking children to and from school. I had a good route. It covered several small towns between Cedar Falls and Waterloo. The job was stable, although sometimes I had to put up with children's screams and pranks. But children are children, and I never got particularly angry with them. I remember how one girl, Emma, I think, gave me drawings she had made at home every morning. I put them in the glove compartment and kept them there all week, and on Friday I took them home to show Marge. At the time, I lived with my wife Marge in a small two-story house on Elm Street, on the outskirts of Cedar Falls. We bought the house in 1974, when we were still young, and took out a 20-year mortgage. Marge worked at the city library as an assistant librarian, then became the head of the children's department. She loved books more than most people and could talk for hours about a new book that had arrived at the library. We had 3 rooms at home filled with bookshelves. I used to joke that I lived in a library branch. Our daughter Darlene was born in 1982. The birth was difficult, and the doctors said there could be complications, but everything turned out fine. Darlene grew up to be a calm child and didn't cause any particular trouble. She did well in school, sang in the school choir, and played the piano. Marge had high hopes for her and wanted her daughter to go to college and get a good education. But after school, Darlene got a job at a local factory, and a year later she met Rex Crane. He was 21 at the time and worked in the warehouse of the same factory. He wasn't the worst guy, but he wasn't the best either. Marge didn't like him very much, saying that he wasn't ambitious and that Darlene wouldn't get very far with him. But her daughter was in love, and we didn't stand in her way. They got married in 1999, when Darlene turned 17. It was a modest wedding at the local church with about 40 guests. At the time, Rex was still trying to make a good impression, helping us around the house and being polite to Marge. But over time, his true character began to show more and more. He liked to drink beer with his friends after work and would sometimes stay out late without telling Darlene. She complained to us about it, but she always made excuses for him, saying that men need to have their fun. Marge died 5 years ago of pancreatic cancer. She was diagnosed in February and passed away in August. It was 6 months of suffering for her and for me. I took unpaid leave to care for my wife and take her to treatments at the hospital in Cedar Rapids. The chemotherapy didn't help, and the doctors just threw up their hands. Marge was losing weight before our eyes, but she held on bravely and hardly complained. In her last weeks, she couldn't get out of bed, and I fed her with a spoon like a baby. She died at home, at night, in her sleep. I woke up in the morning and realized she was gone. After the funeral, the house seemed huge and empty. Every object reminded me of Marge: her cup in the kitchen, her slippers by the bed, the book on the nightstand with a bookmark halfway through. For a long time, I couldn't bring myself to put these things away. They seemed like my last connection to her. Darlene came by more often then, helping with the housework, cooking meals, cleaning up. She understood how hard it was for me and tried to support me, but gradually her visits became less frequent. She had her own life, her own concerns, and I understood that. Now I live alone in the same house where I spent the best years of my life. I get up at 7 in the morning out of habit, even though I don't have to rush anywhere. After more than 30 years of work, my body has gotten used to getting up early, and now I wake up automatically, even if I went to bed late the night before. The first thing I do is go to the kitchen and make coffee in the same old coffee maker that Marge and I bought back in the 80s. I drink my coffee at the kitchen table and read the local newspaper, The Courier, which I have been subscribing to for many years. The news is mostly local: who got married, who died, which roads will be repaired, when the next fair will be held. After coffee and the newspaper, I take a shower, shave, and get dressed. Then I have breakfast, usually eggs and bacon or oatmeal with raisins. Marge always said that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and I still follow her advice. After breakfast, my day begins. In the summer, I work in the small garden behind the house. I grow tomatoes, cucumbers, and some greens. In the fall and winter, I spend more time at home, doing odd jobs around the house or reading. Marge's library habit rubbed off on me a little, although I prefer detective stories and military fiction to her beloved classics. My pension is small, about $1,200 a month, but it's enough to live on. The house has long been paid off, and I have an old but reliable car. A 1996 Ford Taurus with high mileage, but the engine is still good. I don't have any special expenses, except for groceries, utilities, and medicine. With age, my health has started to fail. My blood pressure fluctuates, and my knees sometimes hurt, especially when it rains. But overall, I'm still a strong man and can take care of everything myself. 2 or 3 times a week, I go to the Hy-Vee supermarket for groceries. Once a month, I go to the bank to withdraw cash and check my account. Sometimes I stop by the clinic to see Dr. Henderson, who has been treating me for 15 years. He's a good doctor, not young, and he understands the problems of people our age. He doesn't scare me unnecessarily, but he doesn't hide the truth either. He says that I'm in pretty good shape for my age, and the main thing is not to let myself go, to move more, and not to eat too much fatty food. In the evenings, I usually watch TV, the news, sports programs, sometimes old movies, or I read a book I got from the library. I don't go there often now, but I do drop in sometimes. There are new people working there, young people. They don't know me. Only the old security guard, Frank, sometimes asks how I'm doing. He still remembers Marge. On weekends, Orville Tucker, my old friend, sometimes comes to visit me. We've known each other for 40 years, since I was just starting out as a bus driver. Orville worked his whole life as a railroad mechanic, repairing locomotives and cars. He was a reliable and thorough man with golden hands. He could fix anything. After retiring, he became interested in wood carving and makes various figurines, boxes, and stands. He sells his work at local fairs and online, although he is not very good with computers. His nephew helps him. Orville never had a family. When he was young, he dated a teacher from Waterloo named Margaret. She was a beautiful, intelligent woman. They were even engaged, but then something went wrong. Orville doesn't like to talk about it, but I know that she married someone else and moved to Minnesota. He has remained a bachelor ever since. He lived in a small apartment near the railroad depot, then bought a house on the outskirts of town. Now we are two old bachelors, passing the time together. On that October morning when it all began, I got up at 7 as usual, drank my coffee, and read the newspaper. It was cool outside, about 5 degrees, and the wind was blowing yellowed leaves around the yard. I thought I'd have to rake them up and burn them soon. Marge didn't like it when I burned leaves, saying it was bad for the environment. But what else could I do with them? Put them in bags and take them to the dump. Too much trouble for an old man. Around 10 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. I looked out the window and saw Orville's old Chevrolet in the driveway. He arrived earlier than usual. He usually showed up after lunch. "Clayton, isn't it a little early for coffee?" he asked, walking into the kitchen without invitation, as he had done for many years. "Second time this morning," I replied, taking another mug out of the cupboard. "You're early today." "I had some business in town, so I decided to stop by. I was at the bank getting my pension." "How are you doing?" Orville sat down at the table and smoothed his thinning gray hair. He was wearing a red and black plaid shirt and old but clean jeans. He always took care of himself, even in his old age. He didn't allow himself to look sloppy, unlike many of our peers who had completely let themselves go after retirement. His face was weather-beaten, his hands calloused and scarred from years of working with iron, but his eyes were still lively and curious. "Same as usual," I replied, pouring him coffee from the coffee maker. "Yesterday, I patched up the roof in the garage. Rain was dripping through the cracks. The tiles are old and cracked in places. Did you fix it yourself again? You could have called me. I would have helped." "It's no big deal. Only took half an hour. Replaced a few tiles, sealed them with caulk. Still, at our age, it's better not to climb on roofs alone. If you fall, who will find you?" We drank our coffee in silence. Outside the window, the October wind blew yellowed maple leaves from the tree Marge had planted in the yard 20 years ago. Back then, it was a small sapling, but now it was a large tree that provided good shade in the summer. I thought that soon we would have to rake those leaves. Every year there were more and more of them. "Listen, Clay," Orville began, putting his mug on the table and looking at me seriously. "Have you ever thought about, well, meeting someone?" "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said. Getting to know a woman. Marge has been gone for 5 years now. Are you going to be alone for the rest of your life?" I looked at him in surprise. Orville never meddled in personal matters. He was a sensitive man, and such a conversation was uncharacteristic of him. But apparently he had been thinking about it for a long time and had finally decided to speak up. Orv, I'm 67 years old. What kind of dating? I'm an old man. Come on, 67 isn't old. You're a healthy man. You have your own house, a car, a stable pension. Why sit alone in this house like a hermit? Marge wouldn't want you to suffer like this. I'm not suffering. I'm just living. You call that living? Get up, eat, watch TV, go to bed, every day. That's not living, Cleet. That's existing. Orville spoke quietly, but there was firmness in his voice. I realized that he hadn't just started this conversation on a whim, but had thought it through carefully. Do you have any suggestions? I asked with a slight smile. I do. Do you remember Dolores Ramirez? She worked in the personnel department at the railroad. She was a cheerful, plump woman. Well, she told me about these meetings. For people our age, once a month they get together at a restaurant, meet people, socialize. Normal people, not just any riffraff. So do you go there? I've been twice. It's interesting, you know. There are men and women there. All kinds. Some are widowed, some are divorced, some have just been single their whole lives. They talk, laugh, tell all kinds of stories. It's better than sitting at home in front of the TV. Orville took a folded piece of paper out of his shirt pocket and unfolded it on the table. There's a meeting today, at 7 in the evening, at Harvest Moon on Main Street. Do you know the place? I do. Marge and I have had dinner there a couple of times. It's a good restaurant. Exactly. Let's go together. It won't make things worse, and maybe it will make them better. I took the flyer and unfolded it. It said in large letters, Dating Club for People Over 55. Every third Saturday of the month at Harvest Moon on Main Street. Admission is free. Everyone pays for their own order. Come on in, don't be shy. You'll find new friends and maybe even love. At the bottom was the organizer's phone number and email address. I don't know, Orv. It all seems kind of artificial, like a bride fair. It's not artificial. It's just people getting together and chatting over dinner. No one is forcing anyone to do anything. If you want to talk, you talk. If you don't, you sit quietly. If you don't like it, you get up and leave. No one will hold you back. What kind of people are there? Some desperate housewives? No, all kinds. I met a retired teacher there named Betty. She worked in a school for 30 years, and her husband died 3 years ago. She's a normal, educated woman. And there was another one, Joyce, who worked as a nurse in a hospital. She's a widow, too. They're all decent people, Clay. I put the flyer aside. The idea still seemed strange and a little humiliating to me. After Marge, I didn't even think about other women. And what could I offer them? A boring, retired life, a house where everything reminded me of my dead wife, conversations about the weather and ailments. Besides, I was out of practice with women, didn't know what to talk to them about. I'll think about it, I said vaguely. Don't think about it, decide. Life is passing you by, Cleet, and you're still sitting in this house like it's a tomb. Marge is dead, but you're still alive, and you have a right to happiness. Are you happy after these meetings? I wouldn't say I'm happy, but it's become more interesting. At least I have someone to talk to besides you, Orville smiled. He stayed for another hour and we talked about all sorts of things. Politics, how prices in stores had gone up again, how winter promised to be cold. But the thought of the meeting wouldn't leave me. Maybe Orville was right. Maybe it was time to change my life a little, to get out of this vicious circle of loneliness. After Orville left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, looking at the flyer. Dating club for people over 55. It sounded kind of silly, but at the same time intriguing. I imagined a group of elderly people sitting awkwardly at tables trying to strike up a conversation. Probably there would be disappointed women looking for someone to provide for them in their old age, and lonely men dreaming of a free housekeeper. But on the other hand, what if Orville was right and there really were normal people there, just looking for company? Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I decided to call Darlene. I suddenly wanted to hear her voice, to find out how she was doing. We now talk no more than once a week, and even then it was mostly on my initiative. Darlene never called first, except on my birthday or at Christmas. The phone rang for a long time, and I was about to hang up when Darlene finally answered. I could hear some sounds in the background, either music or the TV. Hello? Hi, sweetie. It's Dad. Oh, hi, Dad. Hold on a second. I heard her cover the receiver with her hand and say something to someone. Then the sound stopped. So, how are you? It's been a while since we last talked. Everything's fine. Working as usual, I could hear the fatigue and irritation in her voice, as if my call had interrupted her from doing something important. Darlene worked in the Human Resources Department at Iowa Agritechs, a factory that manufactured spare parts for agricultural machinery. The work wasn't the most interesting, filing paperwork, interviewing new employees, maintaining personnel files, but it was stable and paid well. How's Rex? How's his job? Same as always. He stayed late again yesterday and came home at 11. He says there's a lot going on at the warehouse. They're doing inventory, but I think he's just hanging out with his coworkers. They're probably sitting in some bar drinking beer. Maybe he really does have a lot of work. It's autumn now, so there are probably a lot of orders. Maybe, she replied without enthusiasm, and I realized that she didn't really believe it. Dad, why are you calling? Did something happen? No, nothing special. I just wanted to talk. We haven't seen each other in a while. 3 weeks already. Listen, I'm a little busy right now. I'm cleaning, and then I have to go to the store. Maybe we can talk longer another time. Of course, daughter, I won't bother you. Just tell me, how are you feeling? Are you sick? No, everything's fine. Dad, I really have to go. Okay, see you later. Take care. Bye, Dad. I hung up and felt the familiar emptiness in my chest. My conversations with Darlene were becoming more and more formal and shorter. She clearly resented these calls, answered in monosyllables, and hurried to end the conversation. I understood that she had her own life, her own problems, but it still hurt. Before, when Marge was alive, Darlene often came to visit us on weekends. We had lunch together on Sundays, discussed all kinds of family matters, and looked at old photos. Marge always knew how to get her daughter to talk, to find out what was on her mind. Now, Darlene only showed up for major holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and even then, not always. I understood that I was partly to blame for this estrangement. After Marge's death, I withdrew into myself, became gloomy and silent. Darlene tried to support me, but I didn't let her, pushing away her attempts to help. It seemed to me that no one could understand my pain, that all words of comfort were empty sounds. Gradually, my daughter stopped trying, and a wall of silence and mutual misunderstanding grew between us. I spent the rest of the day doing my usual chores, but the thought of meeting at the restaurant kept nagging at me. I kept telling myself it was a stupid idea, then thought maybe it was worth a try. By evening, when it was already dark outside and the streetlights had come on, I finally made up my mind. Orville was right. It couldn't get any worse. At least it was better than another evening in front of the TV watching a fishing show or an old action movie. I took a shower, shaved with a fresh razor, and put on my best shirt, a dark blue one with thin white stripes, which I had bought with Marge 3 years ago for some family celebration. It had been hanging in the closet, waiting for the right occasion. Perhaps that occasion had arrived. I put on dark trousers, polished my shoes, and sprayed on some cologne, which I hadn't used in a long time either. I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look bad for my age. My gray hair was neatly combed, my face was clean shaven, and my eyes were clear. Maybe I'm not quite an old man yet. At 6:30, I called Orville and told him I was ready to go. I could hear surprise and joy in his voice. Wow, I thought you changed your mind. Great, Cleet. I'll pick you up in half an hour. The Harvest Moon restaurant was located in the center of town on the main street. It was a decent establishment with a good reputation, frequented mainly by middle-aged couples and older people. The interior was rustic in style. Wooden tables, brick walls, subdued lighting. Marge and I had dined here a couple of times on special occasions. Our wedding anniversary or her birthday. When Orville and I entered, I immediately understood where the singles meeting was taking place. In the far corner of the room, several tables had been pushed together, with about 15 people seated around them. The participants ranged in age from 50 to over 70. There were about twice as many women as men. Everyone was dressed modestly and behaved with restraint, but there was a certain tension in the air, typical of such events. Over there is Dolores, Orville pointed to a heavy-set woman in a bright red dress who was talking animatedly to a group of listeners. She's the boss here. She organizes everything. We approached the tables. Dolores noticed us and smiled broadly. Oh, Orville, how nice of you to come. And this must be your friend you were telling me about? Yes, this is Clayton Merrick. Clay, this is Dolores Ramirez, whom I was telling you about. It's very nice to meet you. Dolores shook my hand firmly. Come in, have a seat. We have a wonderful group here today. She led us to the empty seats. I found myself next to a woman in her 60s, quite attractive, with neatly styled gray hair and attentive brown eyes. She was wearing a simple but well-made dark green dress and a thin gold chain around her neck. My name is Evelyn Stoneheart, she said, extending her hand. Clayton Merrick. It's very nice to meet you. This is my first time here. First time? Yes, a friend persuaded me to come. How long have you been attending these meetings? This is my second time. Last month was my first time, and I decided to try again. Evelyn had a pleasant voice, not old-fashioned, but sonorous and melodious. She spoke softly but clearly, choosing her words carefully. It was immediately apparent that she was an educated woman with good manners. The evening began with Dolores asking everyone to introduce themselves and tell a little about themselves. It was a little awkward, but everyone obediently followed the ritual. When it was my turn, I briefly explained that I had worked as a school bus driver, retired, and been widowed 5 years ago. Do you have any children? One of the women asked. A daughter. She's married and lives here in town. Evelyn listened attentively, nodding occasionally. When it was her turn, she said she had worked as a teller at First National Bank for 28 years and had recently retired. She had been widowed 2 years ago. She had no children. That's just how it turned out. What do you do in your retirement? I asked. I read, go to the theater sometimes in Cedar Rapids. I knit. I have a small garden where I grow flowers. And you? I also garden, but mainly vegetables. I read detective novels. I watch TV. What kind of detective novels do you like? All kinds. Agatha Christie, for example, or contemporary American authors. Oh, I love Agatha Christie too. Poirot is my favorite detective. The conversation flowed easily and naturally. It turned out we had a lot in common. We both loved to read, we had both lost our life partners, and we were both trying to find meaning in our new, solitary lives. Evelyn told me that her husband Robert had died of a heart attack 2 years ago, right at work. He was an insurance agent and was 8 years older than her. We lived together for 35 years, she said quietly. They were good years. He was a kind, caring man. We just couldn't have children. We tried, but it wasn't meant to be. I lived with my wife for 30 years, so I replied. They were good years, too. We had one daughter, but we loved her very much. I suppose she supports you now. I hesitated, not knowing what to say. I didn't want to tell a stranger about my relationship problems with Darlene. Well, she has her own life, I said evasively. Husband, work, worries. Evelyn nodded understandingly, apparently sensing my awkwardness. The rest of the meeting participants also gradually broke into pairs and small groups, chatting and laughing. The atmosphere was quite relaxed, although I could sense that many, like me, were a little nervous. Orville sat across the table from us and talked to the teacher Betty, whom he had mentioned that morning. From time to time, he winked at me, letting me know that he was happy with my choice of conversation partner. Evelyn and I talked for almost 2 hours. She told me about her job at the bank and how difficult it was to get used to retirement after many years of active work. I told her about my years driving a school bus, funny stories about the children, and how the city had changed over the years. Have you ever thought about moving somewhere else? She asked. Maybe somewhere warmer, like Florida, for example. I've thought about it, but not seriously. My whole life is here. My friends are here. My wife's grave is here. And my daughter is nearby, even though we don't see each other often. I understand. I've thought about moving too, but it's scary to start all over again in a new place. And Robert is buried here in St. Patrick's Cemetery. As our meeting came to an end, I felt that I didn't want to part with Evelyn. During those 2 hours, I experienced something I hadn't felt in a long time. Interest in another person, a desire to continue communicating. Evelyn was an intelligent, sensitive woman, and it was easy to talk to her. Evelyn, I said as we left the restaurant, would you like to, well, meet again? Maybe tomorrow afternoon, somewhere more relaxed? She smiled, and I noticed that she had a very beautiful smile. I'd love to, Clayton. Where would you like to meet? There's a cafe called Maple Leaf on Park Avenue. It's a quiet place with good coffee. Would that be okay? Perfect. What time? How about 2 o'clock in the afternoon? It's a date. We said goodbye, and I walked her to her old beige Honda Civic. Orville was waiting for me by his car with a satisfied smile. So what did you think? He asked as we drove home. Not bad. Evelyn seemed like an interesting woman. I saw. You two talked almost the whole evening. Are you meeting tomorrow? How did you know? I can see it in your face. I haven't seen you like this in a long time. So alive, I mean. So there is a point to these meetings. At home, I couldn't fall asleep for a long time. Memories of the past evening and my conversation with Evelyn were spinning in my head. It was strange to admit to myself, but I really liked her. Not only as a woman, although she was attractive for her age, but also as a person. There was something calm, reliable, and trustworthy about her. In the morning, I woke up earlier than usual, at 6:30, and realized that I was nervous about the upcoming meeting. It was a strange feeling. I hadn't been this nervous in many years, not since I was courting Marge. I took a shower, shaved carefully, and put on a clean shirt. The time before the meeting dragged on slowly. I arrived at Maple Leaf Cafe 10 minutes before the appointed time. It was a small, cozy place with wooden tables and soft sofas. The walls were decorated with photographs of old Cedar Falls. There weren't many people there. A few students with laptops, an elderly couple by the window, a young mother with a child. Evelyn arrived at 2 o'clock sharp. She was wearing a light gray sweater and dark blue pants, and she looked fresh and neat. I stood up to greet her. You're not late? She asked, sitting down across from me. No, it's fine. I just got here myself. We ordered coffee and pastries. The conversation picked up where it left off yesterday. Evelyn told me more about her life, how she met her husband, her job at the bank, how she spends her time in retirement. I told her about Marge, how we met in our years together. Was it hard to get used to being alone? She asked. Very hard. The first year after she died, I almost lost my mind. Everything in the house reminded me of her, all our habits, our daily routine. I even thought about selling the house and moving into an apartment. But then I decided that would be running away. I sold our house, said Evelyn. There were too many memories. I bought a small house on the outskirts and started a new life there. And did it help? I don't know. It varies. Sometimes it seems like it did, that it got easier. Other times I think I shouldn't have sold it. There were good memories there too. After the cafe, we went for a walk in the city park. It was a clear, warm October day, and the leaves on the trees were ablaze with yellow and red. We walked along the paths talking about all sorts of things: books, movies, plans for the winter. Evelyn said that every winter she visits her niece in Minnesota and stays there for a week or two. Do you go anywhere? She asked. No, nowhere. My daughter sometimes invites me for the holidays, but I don't go anywhere else. I don't have any special friends except Orville. Maybe it's good to have one loyal friend? Maybe. Orville is a really good friend. Just yesterday he dragged me to this meeting, and I resisted. And now what do you think? Was it a mistake? I looked at her and smiled. Definitely not a mistake. We walked for about an hour, then I offered to walk her home. Evelyn agreed, saying she lived nearby on Oak Street. We got in my car and she gave me directions. When we turned onto her street, I felt like I knew the place. And when Evelyn pointed to a small one-story house with blue shutters, I realized why. This is my house, she said. I stopped the car and looked around. Directly across the street was Darlene and Rex's two-story house. I recognized it immediately. Yellow siding, red roof, small yard with a metal fence. It can't be, I muttered. Is something wrong? Evelyn asked, surprised. Evelyn, that house, the yellow one across the street. Do you know who lives there? She looked in the direction I was pointing, and her expression changed slightly. Why? Do you know them? It's my daughter's house. Darlene. She lives there with her husband. Evelyn was silent for a moment, thinking about something. What a coincidence, she said finally, but there was a note of uncertainty in her voice. Yes, indeed. So you're neighbors. I didn't know Darlene lived on Oak Street. She didn't tell me her address. I only knew it was somewhere in this neighborhood. Neighbors, Evelyn repeated. Yes, you could say that. Something in her tone made me wary. Are you acquainted with them? Do you socialize? Not particularly. You know how it is with neighbors. We say hello sometimes, and that's about it. I see. And how are they as neighbors? Normal? Evelyn paused again, clearly choosing her words. Well, mostly yes. It's just that sometimes, how can I put it, they like to have fun, especially on weekends. They have guests over, loud music. But that's normal. They're young. Guests? Do they get together often? From time to time. Not every weekend, of course, but it happens. I sensed that she was holding something back, but I didn't press her. Maybe Darlene and Rex really did have parties sometimes. There was nothing unusual about that. I'm sorry if they bother you. I'll talk to my daughter and ask her to be more careful with the music. No, don't worry about it. It's not every day, just occasionally. I'm not that picky. It's still uncomfortable. Good neighbors are important. Evelyn got out of the car but lingered at the open door. Clayton, I really enjoyed our day. Thank you. Me too. Maybe we can meet again? I'd love to. Give me a call and we'll arrange something. She gave me her phone number, written on a small piece of paper. I watched her walk to the porch, waited until she opened the door and waved to me, and then drove home. On the way, I kept thinking about this strange coincidence. What are the odds that the woman I liked lives right across from my daughter's house? On the one hand, it was convenient. I could visit the area more often without arousing Darlene's suspicions. On the other hand, I was a little confused by Evelyn's reaction when she found out that Darlene was my daughter. Something about her behavior seemed unnatural to me, as if she knew more about Darlene and Rex than she was saying. At home, I called Orville and told him about my day. So she lives across from Darlene? He asked in surprise. Wow, what does she say about your daughter? Nothing special, just that they sometimes make noise on weekends and invite guests over. Well, that's normal. Young people want to have fun. Yes, probably. But something inside me told me that it wasn't as simple as it seemed. 3 weeks flew by unnoticed. Evelyn and I met every other day, sometimes every day. We went to cafes, walked in the park, and went to Cedar Rapids to see a play. I felt myself gradually thawing after long years of loneliness. Evelyn was exactly the person I had been missing. Calm, kind, understanding. I could talk to her about anything, and she never judged me or gave me unsolicited advice. We told each other a lot about our past. Evelyn told me how she met her husband Robert at the bank, where he was applying for a home loan. How he then found reasons to visit the bank every week until he finally plucked up the courage to ask her out on a date. I told her about my first meeting with Marge at a dance in the city club, about how I couldn't bring myself to approach her for a long time because she seemed too beautiful and intelligent to me. You know, Clayton, Evelyn said one day as we sat on a bench in the park, I thought I would never be able to love again. After Robert's death, it felt like my heart had turned to stone forever. What changed? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. I met you, she replied simply, and I felt something warm spread through my chest. I, too, was beginning to realize that I was falling in love. For the first time in 5 years since Marge's death, I woke up thinking about someone else, eagerly awaiting our meetings, planning where we would go and what we would talk about. It was a strange, almost forgotten feeling, but a very pleasant one. During those 3 weeks, I drove past Darlene's house several times when I took Evelyn home or picked her up. My daughter and son-in-law's cars were usually parked in the driveway, but I didn't see them. Evelyn no longer mentioned the noisy neighbors, and I decided that the problem was not as serious as it had seemed at first. November 8th was Darlene's birthday. She was turning 41. I remembered the date, of course, and called her in the morning to wish her a happy birthday. Calling on such days was our tradition, which I tried to observe despite the cooling of our relationship. Hi, daughter, I said when she answered. Happy birthday. Thanks, Dad. Her voice sounded tired and somewhat indifferent. How are you? What are your plans for today? Are you going to celebrate? No, nothing special. We'll stay at home, maybe watch a movie. I don't want to invite anyone over. I'm tired of everything. How about I come over? I'll buy a cake and we can sit together. No, Dad, I'm really not in the mood today. Another time. As you wish. I bought you a gift, a beautiful shawl. Maybe I'll come by tomorrow? Let's do it sometime next week. I have a headache right now. I just want some peace and quiet. I understand. Well, take care of yourself. And happy birthday again. Thanks, Dad. Bye. The conversation left an unpleasant aftertaste. Darlene spoke as if my call was a burden, not a sign of concern. I understood that people have bad days, but it was still hurtful. Had I really become such a stranger to my daughter? In the evening, I visited Evelyn. We had dinner at home. She made an excellent baked chicken with vegetables. After dinner, we sat in the living room, drank tea, and listened to soft music on the radio. It was cozy and peaceful. I told her about my conversation with my daughter. Don't be upset, Evelyn said, covering my hand with hers. Maybe she really did have problems at work or something else. People aren't always ready to share their feelings, even with those closest to them. Maybe. We used to be much closer. After Marge died, something between us broke. Have you tried talking to her about it? Openly, honestly? I don't know how to start that conversation, and she seems to avoid serious topics. We talked about it for a while longer, then moved on to other topics. Around 10 o'clock, I got ready to go home. Evelyn walked me to the door, and we kissed goodbye. The first time we had done so in the 3 weeks we had known each other, and I felt like a schoolboy. At home, I took a shower, read a little, and went to bed around 11. I fell asleep quickly and slept soundly. I woke up to the sound of the phone ringing. It was 20 minutes past midnight. Who could be calling at this hour? My first thought was that something had happened to Darlene or Orville. I quickly picked up the phone. Hello? Clayton, it's Evelyn. Her voice trembled with excitement. I'm sorry to call so late, but what's wrong? Are you okay? No, not really. The neighbors are having some kind of party. They're shouting very loudly, the music is blaring, and now, I think they're breaking my fence. I sat up in bed, finally awake. Which neighbors? Darlene and her husband? Yes, I think it's them, and a few other people with them. Clayton, they're shouting something about money, demanding that I give them something. I don't understand what's going on. Someone is throwing rocks at the windows. There was a noise on the line, shouting, crashing, the sound of broken glass. Evelyn, call the police immediately. I wanted to, but she's your daughter. I don't know what to do. Forget that she's my daughter. If they're threatening you, call the police. Wait, it got quieter on the line. She must have moved away from the window. Maybe you should come yourself? Talk to them? I don't want to cause a scene, but I'm scared. I was already pulling on my pants, holding the phone with my shoulder. Of course I'll come. Lock yourself in the house. Don't let anyone in. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Thank you, Clayton. Please hurry. I got dressed in 2 minutes, grabbed my car keys, and ran out of the house. On the way, I thought about what could have happened. Could Darlene, her husband, and their friends have gotten drunk and started a brawl? But why did they pick on Evelyn? And what was all that talk about money? On Oak Street, I heard the noise before I saw Evelyn's house. Loud music, shouting, the sound of breaking glass. When I turned the corner, the scene that greeted me made my heart race with rage. There were 5 people in Evelyn's yard. Darlene, Rex, and 3 men I didn't know. They were all clearly drunk, staggering around and shouting loudly. The wooden fence between the properties was partially broken, with boards lying on the ground. Several windows in the house had holes in them, apparently broken by stones lying beneath them. Darlene was shouting something, waving her arms. She was wearing a short dress and a jacket. Her hair was tousled. Rex was holding on to the fence to keep from falling. One of the strangers, a stocky man in a denim jacket, was kicking the porch of the house. The other 2 stood a little further away, discussing something loudly. Hey, old woman, Rex yelled toward the house. We know you're home. Come out. Let's talk this over nicely. Come on out, Darlene chimed in. You owe us. You owe us for the fence, for the trouble. I stopped the car and got out, feeling my head boiling with anger. But before I could say anything, one of the strangers, a tall, thin guy in his 30s, walked over to Evelyn's garage. A minute later, he returned with a red plastic canister. "Hey, Rex!" he shouted. "Look what I found!" He unscrewed the cap of the canister and sniffed it. "Gasoline!" Great stuff for conversation. My heart skipped a beat. Were they really going to set the house on fire? The guy walked up to the porch and started pouring gasoline on the wooden steps and railings. The sharp smell spread throughout the yard. "Maybe now you'll come out and talk," he shouted toward the house. "Otherwise, there might be a fire." The other stranger, a short, fat man in a baseball cap, reached into his pocket and took out a lighter. "Go ahead, Charlie, light it up. Let him know we're not messing around." I couldn't stand there and watch any longer. Grabbing the first thing I could find, a garden rake leaning against the fence, I rushed into the yard. "Stop! Stop right now!" All five of them turned at my shout. Darlene was the first to recognize me. "Here comes Daddy!" she shouted with drunken malice. "You old fool, what are you doing here?" "Darlene, what's going on? Why are you harassing this woman?" "What business is it of yours?" Rex interjected, staggering as he took a step toward me. "This is none of your business. It's very much my business. This woman is my friend." "Oh, a friend," Darlene laughed. "The old goat has a girlfriend, and we know what kind of girlfriend she is." The guy with the can was still standing on the porch, gasoline continuing to spill onto the ground. The one with the lighter made a move as if he was going to light it. "Get away from the house," I yelled, raising the rake. "What are you going to do, old man?" He smirked. "Swing a rake?" "I will." I swung and hit him on the hands with the rake. The lighter flew away and the guy howled in pain. Without stopping, I turned around and hit the guy, pouring gasoline on the back with the rake. The canister fell out of his hands and he fell to his knees. "What are you doing, old man?" Rex yelled and lunged at me. I met him with a blow to the stomach with the rake handle. Rex doubled over and fell to the ground, gasping for air. The other two strangers backed away, apparently not expecting such a response from an elderly man. "Dad, you're out of your mind," Darlene shouted. "These are our friends." "What friends?" "You were going to set the house on fire." "Come on, we just wanted to talk to this." "Get out of here right now, all of you, and don't let me see you here again." The guy I hit first got up from the ground, holding his arm. "You'll pay for this, old man," he hissed. "Try it," I said, keeping the rake raised. Apparently there was something in my voice that sobered him up. He backed away toward the gate. "Let's get out of here," he muttered to the others. "I'm not getting involved with a lunatic." The one who had been pouring gasoline also got up, rubbing his back. "Are you going to take the canister?" I asked. "Screw it." The first one waved his hand. "Let's go, guys." Rex was still sitting on the ground, breathing heavily. Darlene went over to him and helped him up. "Rex, are you okay?" "I'm fine," he croaked. "That lunatic almost killed me." "He should have killed you," I snapped, "for trying to set the house on fire." "We weren't going to set anything on fire," Darlene snapped. "We were just scaring her a little." "Scare her? Scare a woman? Break her windows? Tear down her fence? It's her own fault. She's always complaining about us, calling the management company. And she's right to do so, if you behave like that." The two strangers had already reached the road and were looking back apprehensively. Rex managed to get up, with Darlene supporting him by the arm. "Let's go home," she said to him. "There's nothing more to do here." They started to leave, but at the gate, Darlene turned around. "You'll regret this, old man. Don't think you'll get away with it so easily." "Get out of here," I shouted, "and don't you dare come back." When all five of them disappeared around the corner, I put down the rake and walked toward the house. The door opened and Evelyn appeared on the threshold. Her face was pale, her eyes red. She had been crying. "Clayton," she whispered. "Thank you. I was so scared." "It's okay, they're gone. Are you all right?" "Yes, I was in the house the whole time." "But they broke 3 windows in the fence, and they almost set the house on fire." I hugged her and felt her trembling. "Come with me," I said. "You can't stay here." "They might come back." "But what about the house?" "The windows are broken. We'll come back in the morning and fix everything." "Now let's go." Evelyn quickly gathered the necessary things into a small bag. I helped her to the car. On the way home, she told me what had happened. At first, they were just making noise in the yard, playing loud music. Then they started shouting something about me interfering with their lives, complaining to someone. And then they demanded money, saying that I had to pay them for moral damages. I didn't understand what they were talking about. Did you really complain about them? I called the management company once when they were blasting music until 3 in the morning. But it's normal to ask people to keep quiet, isn't it? Of course it's normal. And they made such a fuss about it. At home, I settled Evelyn in the guest room and made her some tea with valerian. She was still shaking from the shock she had experienced. Clayton, what will happen now? She asked. Your daughter is angry with me. And with you, too. I don't know, I replied honestly. I'll try to talk to her tomorrow. But don't worry, I'll protect you. I didn't fall asleep until morning. The events of the night were spinning around in my head. I couldn't believe my daughter was capable of such a thing. Darlene, whom I had raised and loved, had turned into a drunken hooligan, ready to set her neighbor's house on fire. What had happened to her? And what should I do now? In the morning, I woke up at 6:30 with a heavy head and an unpleasant feeling in my chest. The events of the previous night did not seem like a dream. They were too vivid, too painful. Evelyn was still sleeping in the guest room, and I could hear her steady breathing through the thin wall. It was good that she was able to rest after yesterday's nightmare. I quietly went to the kitchen and made some coffee. My hands were still shaking, either from nervous tension or from the adrenaline that had not yet left my blood. Last night I felt young and strong as I swung the rake, protecting Evelyn. Now I realized that I could have been seriously injured. 5 drunk men against 1 elderly man. But at that moment, I didn't think about the consequences. I acted instinctively. While drinking coffee, I thought about the situation. I needed to talk to Darlene, find out what had prompted her to behave this way. Could Evelyn's complaint to the management company really have caused such aggression? Or were there deeper reasons? Maybe my daughter had problems with money, work, or her husband. I realized that in recent years I had become completely distant from her life and didn't know what was going on in her family. At 8 in the morning, Evelyn woke up. She came into the kitchen wearing my old bathrobe, which I had given her the day before, looking tired and confused. How did you sleep? I asked, pouring her some coffee. Thanks, not bad, although I had nightmares, like the house was on fire and I couldn't get out. I understand. That's normal after such a traumatic experience. Clayton, what's going to happen now? I'm afraid to go home. What if they come back? They won't. I'll talk to Darlene today and find out what's going on. Maybe it's just drunken stupidity, and she'll understand everything when she's sober. Evelyn shook her head. You're too kind to her, Clayton. What they did yesterday wasn't foolish. It was a real attack. They wanted to set my house on fire. Maybe they were just trying to scare you. People often do foolish things when they're drunk, things they later regret. What if they don't regret it? What if this is normal for them? I didn't know how to respond. Deep down, I knew Evelyn was right. What I saw last night wasn't just drunken rowdiness. There was real malice in Darlene's eyes, and Rex and his friend's actions were deliberately cruel. After breakfast, I drove Evelyn to her house so she could assess the damage in daylight and pick up some essentials. The scene was depressing. 3 broken windows, a broken fence, trampled flowers in the front yard. The gas can still lay by the porch, giving off a pungent smell. I'll find a repairman to fix the windows, I said, and we'll rebuild the fence too. Clayton, don't. It's too expensive, and I don't have that much money. Don't worry about the money. My daughter did this, so I'm responsible. While Evelyn gathered her things, I cleaned up the broken glass and piled the broken fence boards in a heap. The work helped me take my mind off the upcoming conversation with my daughter, but I still felt heavy-hearted. Around 11 in the morning, I went to Darlene's house. Her Honda was parked in the driveway, so she was home. Rex's beat-up Ford was parked nearby. Apparently, he hadn't gone to work either. Maybe he had the day off, or maybe he just couldn't get up after yesterday. I knocked on the door and waited. I heard muffled voices from inside, then footsteps. Rex opened the door. He looked awful, unshaven, in a wrinkled t-shirt with red eyes. There was a bandage on his forehead. Apparently, he had hit himself after all when I hit him with the rake. Here he is, Rex said without greeting me. The hero with the rake has arrived. I need to talk to my daughter, I said, trying to remain calm. Darlene, he shouted over his shoulder. Your dad's here. Darlene appeared in the hallway. She also looked terrible. Her face was swollen, her hair was messy, and she was wearing an old robe. But most importantly, her eyes held the same malice as last night. "What do you want?" she asked without inviting me in. "To talk. About what happened yesterday." "What is there to talk about? You attacked us with a rake like a madman. I was protecting the woman you wanted to set on fire." "No one was going to set her on fire," Darlene squealed. "We just wanted to scare her a little." "Scare her? Pouring gasoline on a house is scaring her?" "What difference does it make to you?" Rex interjected. "This is our neighborhood business. None of your business. It's my business." "That woman is my friend," Darlene snorted. "Friend? You old goat. You just want to sleep with her. Do you think we don't see you hanging around here every day?" "Darlene." I couldn't believe my daughter would say such things. "So what? I'm telling the truth. Your mother isn't even cold in her grave yet, and you're already fooling around with women. My mother died 5 years ago, and she wouldn't want me to mourn her for the rest of my life." "Don't tell me what she would want," Darlene shouted. "You have no right to talk about her." "Why not?" "Because you were a bad husband and a bad father. Mom suffered her whole life because of you." Those words hit me like a slap in the face. I knew Darlene was angry, but I didn't expect such cruelty. "That's not true," I said quietly. "It is true. Do you think she didn't tell me anything? How you kept quiet at home, how you disappeared at work, how you spent time with your friends instead of being with your family." "Darlene, I work to support you." "Oh, please." "Work? He drove a bus. He drove kids around. What kind of work is that? Real men earn money. They don't make 20 bucks a day." Rex nodded approvingly as he listened to this tirade. "She's right," he added. "A man should provide for his family, not make his wife work for pennies at the library." "And what kind of provider are you?" I couldn't help asking. "You work as a warehouse loader." "But I'm not an old senile man running around with a rake," Rex barked, his face red with anger. "Rex," Darlene said, putting her hand on his shoulder. "Don't mess with him. See how aggressive he is." "Me? Aggressive?" I couldn't believe it. "You were the one who tried to set the house on fire yesterday. And you beat us with a rake." Rex pointed to the bandage. "Look what you did." "I had to get stitches, and rightly so. That wasn't enough." "Oh, really?" Rex took a step forward, but Darlene stopped him. "Enough," she said. "Listen, old man, we have a score to settle with you. For Rex's medical expenses, for emotional distress. You attacked us for no reason." "No reason?" "You admitted yourself that you wanted to scare the woman." "It was a joke." "Did you seriously think we were going to set the house on fire? Are you completely out of your mind?" "If it was a joke, it was a very cruel one." And Evelyn didn't find it funny. "We don't give a damn about your Evelyn," Darlene screamed. "She started it, writing complaints about us, disturbing our peace. She complained about the noise. People have a right to peace and quiet." "What right? We live in our own house. We do what we want, but not at the expense of your neighbors." "Go to hell," Darlene snapped. "I'm sick of your lectures. You old psycho." "Darlene, I'm your father." "Father?" She laughed, but it was a mean, hysterical laugh. "You're not my father. Fathers protect their children. They don't attack them with a rake. I was protecting an innocent woman." "Innocent?" "She's a complete snitch. All the neighbors hate her. And because of her, you raised your hand against your own daughter." "I didn't raise my hand against you, but against those who were going to set the house on fire." "Yes, we were drunk." "How can you take what drunk people say seriously?" "You can if those people have gasoline and lighters." Darlene suddenly stopped screaming and looked at me with such hatred that it sent shivers down my spine. "You know what, Daddy?" she said quietly, but there was steel in her voice. "You made your choice. You chose someone else's woman over your own daughter. Now live with that choice." "Darlene, what are you talking about? What choice?" "It's very simple. Either you apologize to us, pay for Rex's treatment, and never associate with your snitch again, or what? Either you're no longer my father, and I'm no longer your daughter." Those words sounded like a sentence. I looked at Darlene, at her face contorted with anger, and realized that I was looking at a stranger. My daughter, whom I loved, whom I raised and nurtured, was gone. In her place stood an embittered woman demanding that I betray someone dear to me. I will not apologize for protecting a woman from attack, I said slowly, and I will not pay for stopping an attempted arson. So you choose the snitch? I choose the truth and my conscience. Then get out of here, Darlene said, her voice sounding completely foreign. And don't ever come back. You're not my father. You're nothing to me. Darlene, nothing, she shouted. An old psychopath who throws a rake at his own daughter. Get out and don't come back. She slammed the door right in front of me. I stood there for a moment, hoping she would change her mind, come out and say she had overreacted. But the door remained closed. I slowly walked to the car and got behind the wheel. My hands were shaking so badly that I couldn't insert the key into the ignition. My chest felt empty, as if something important and vital had been torn out. My daughter had disowned me. She said I was nobody to her. Was I really such a bad father? Did all those years of care, love, and worry mean nothing? Maybe Darlene was right, and I had only thought about myself and not my family. But no, I remembered playing with little Darlene, reading her bedtime stories, teaching her to ride a bike. I remembered how proud I was of her success at school, how worried I was when she was sick. It was love, real fatherly love. What I saw now was something else. Malice, resentment, a desire to cause pain. Finally, I started the car and drove home. On the way, I thought about how I had lost my daughter, perhaps forever. But at the same time, I knew I had done the right thing. I couldn't let those drunken hooligans set the house on fire. I couldn't abandon Evelyn in her time of need. And if Darlene didn't understand that, then she really had become a stranger. Evelyn was waiting for me at home. She was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea reading the newspaper. When I came in, she immediately understood from my face that the conversation had gone badly. It didn't work out? She asked quietly. No. She kicked me out. She said I'm not her father anymore. Evelyn stood up, came over to me and hugged me. I'm so sorry, Clayton. This is all because of me. No, I shook my head. It's not because of you. It's because my daughter has turned into someone I don't recognize. And maybe I don't want to recognize. Don't you regret protecting me? I looked into her kind, understanding eyes and realized that the answer was obvious. No, I don't regret it. I would do it again. But deep down, the pain of losing my daughter still gnawed at me like a toothache, and I didn't know if it would ever go away. After lunch, Evelyn and I sat in the kitchen for a long time discussing what had happened. She was still upset that she had caused the conflict between me and my daughter, and I tried to convince her that she was not to blame. In the end, she said what I was thinking, but didn't dare say out loud. Clayton, maybe we should go to the police, she said, putting down her cup of tea. What they did yesterday is a crime. The police? I thought about it. The idea had crossed my mind, but I had dismissed it every time. Somehow, I didn't want to take my own daughter to court. Yes, Clayton. They broke my windows, destroyed my fence, and threatened to set my house on fire. That's vandalism, property damage, maybe even attempted arson. And if I don't file a report, they might think they got away with it and do it again. But she's my daughter, Evelyn. Am I not a person? Don't I have the right to protect myself from hooligans just because one of them is your daughter? She was right, and I understood that. Family ties do not give anyone the right to break the law. If strangers had done this to Evelyn, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second. Okay, I finally said. Let's go to the police station. I have photos, Evelyn added. I took pictures of all the damage on my phone this morning, and the neighbors saw what happened. Mrs. Cohen from across the street was looking out her window when they were making noise. The police station was in the center of town, in an old brick building. The officer on duty, a young man of about 25, listened to our story and referred us to Detective Williams, who handled these kinds of cases. Detective Williams turned out to be a middle-aged man with gray temples and attentive gray eyes. He listened patiently to Evelyn's story, looked at the photos on her phone, and recorded my testimony as a witness to the incident. So you're saying that one of the attackers was your daughter? He clarified, looking at me. Yes, Darlene Crane, née Merrick, and her husband, Rex Crane. I understand this is difficult for you, Mr. Merrick, but the law is the same for everyone. If a crime has been committed, We are obligated to investigate it, regardless of family ties. I understand that, Detective. Good. Miss Stoneheart, are you ready to give your official statement and sign the report? Yes, I'm ready. We spent the next hour filling out paperwork. Evelyn described the events of that night in detail, noting the extent of the damage. 3 broken windows, a broken fence, damaged flowers. I told him how I arrived at the scene and saw one man with a can of gasoline and another with a lighter on the porch of the house. Are you sure they were going to set the house on fire? The detective asked. Absolutely. One was pouring gasoline on the porch, the other was holding a lighter at the ready. If I hadn't intervened, they would have done it. What did you do? I took a garden rake and chased them away. Did you use excessive force? No, only what was necessary to prevent the arson. The detective nodded and wrote down my words. Mr. Merrick, you must understand that the attackers may file a counterclaim of assault against you. Let them. I have the right to protect people from criminal attacks. That's true, but be prepared for the case to be complicated due to family circumstances. I'm ready. When all the paperwork was done, the detective said he would visit the people involved in the case in the next few days to get their statements, and then he would decide whether to open a criminal case. How long will that take? Evelyn asked. Usually a week or 2. If we decide to open a case, the suspects will be summoned to give statements and may be arrested if we believe they may flee or repeat the crime. We left the station in the evening. It was drizzling outside and the weather was cloudy and uncomfortable. Evelyn took my arm. Do you think I did the right thing? She asked. Yes, you did. You can't let hooligans get away with whatever they want. Don't you feel sorry for your daughter? I was silent for a long time, thinking about my answer. I feel sorry for the person she used to be, but I don't feel sorry for the person she has become. The following week, life settled into a new rhythm. Evelyn moved in with me. Her house was uninhabitable until the windows were glazed and the fence repaired. The repairman promised to have everything done by the end of the week, but Evelyn was in no hurry to return. We both knew we were happy together. On Wednesday, Detective Williams called. Mr. Merrick, I have news about your case. Can you come to the station? Of course. Has something happened? It's better to discuss it when we meet. Evelyn and I arrived at the station an hour later. The detective greeted us with a serious expression. We conducted an additional investigation, he said. We interviewed the neighbors and examined the scene. Everything confirms your story. In addition, it turns out that this is not the first incident involving the Crane couple. We have several complaints from neighbors about noisy parties, fights in the yard, and insults to passers-by. What does that mean? Evelyn asked. It means we're filing criminal charges for disorderly conduct, willful destruction of property, and attempted arson. The maximum penalty is up to 1 year in prison. I felt something tighten in my chest. After all, she was my daughter, no matter how she behaved. When will they be arrested? I asked. This afternoon. I'm going to their place with a warrant in half an hour. Can I come with you? Why, Mr. Merrick? I don't know. I just want to see how it happens. The detective looked at me intently. All right. But you stay in the car and don't interfere. This is an official police operation. Evelyn decided to stay at the station. She didn't want to see the arrest. I rode with the detective and 2 other officers in a patrol car. We arrived at Oak Street at 2:30 in the afternoon. Darlene and Rex's cars were in the driveway, which meant they were home. Several neighbors had already come out onto the street, apparently noticing the police cars. I stayed in the patrol car as promised, but I could see everything that was happening. Detective Williams approached the door and knocked. Rex opened it, saw the police, and tried to slam the door shut, but the officer stuck his foot in the way. Rex Crane, you are under arrest on suspicion of disorderly conduct, property damage, and attempted arson, the detective said loudly. What? What arson? Rex yelled, but the police officers were already putting his hands behind his back. Darlene appeared. She was in her bathrobe, disheveled, apparently having slept after her night shift. What's going on? Rex, Darlene Crane, you are also under arrest on the same charges, said the second officer. For what? We didn't do anything. You'll tell us at the station. Darlene saw me in the police car, her face contorted with rage. It's him, she shouted, pointing in my direction. My father reported us. The old bastard. Ma'am, please don't resist, said the officer, handcuffing her. How dare you? This is a family matter. What right does the police have to interfere in family matters? Hooliganism and arson are not family matters, ma'am. The neighbors stood in a circle, watching what was happening, whispering among themselves. Some were filming with their phones. For Darlene and Rex, it was a real disgrace. They were being arrested in front of the whole street. As they were being taken away, Darlene shouted at me again, "You'll regret this. I'll never forgive you for this." The car drove away and the street fell silent. The neighbors gradually dispersed, discussing what had happened. I sat in the patrol car and looked at the house where my daughter had grown up. Now it stood empty, and its owner was in a prison cell. "Is it hard?" the detective asked, getting behind the wheel. "Yes, but it's the right thing to do." "I think so. No one has the right to threaten people with arson, even if they are your relatives." The next day, a city prosecutor called me and asked me to come in to give additional testimony. She was a middle-aged woman, Miss Harris, serious and businesslike. "Mr. Merrick, your relative's case is quite serious," she said. "We have witnesses, photographs of the damage, and your testimony as an eyewitness, plus previous complaints from neighbors. This gives us a good chance of a conviction." "What punishment are they facing?" "For group hooliganism, up to 6 months in prison. For intentional damage to property, a fine and compensation for damages. For attempted arson, up to 1 year in prison. Combined, that could be a year in prison for each of them. What if they admit guilt and ask for forgiveness? Then the sentence could be suspended. But that depends on the judge and how sincere their remorse is. I didn't know if Darlene and Rex would repent. Most likely not. They believed they were right and blamed everything on me and Evelyn. A week later, the preliminary hearing took place. Darlene and Rex were released on bail, which was posted by Rex's brother. At the hearing, they denied all charges, claiming that they were just celebrating a birthday and that I had attacked them for no reason. Their lawyer, a young man with a cocky face, tried to present the case as if I were the aggressor and his clients were the victims. But the prosecutor easily refuted this version by presenting photographs of broken windows and a broken fence. "If my client was really the aggressor," said Miss Harris, "then why was all the damage done to the victim's property and not to the defendants?" The trial was set for early December. In the meantime, Darlene and Rex were free but forbidden to come within 100 meters of Evelyn's house. By that time, Evelyn had moved in with me permanently. We decided not to rush into a formal relationship, but we were effectively living as a family. She cooked, I did the housework, and in the evenings we read or watched TV. I hadn't felt this good in years. Sometimes I thought about Darlene, but without the pain I used to feel. I did everything I could as a father. If she chose the path of bitterness and self-destruction, that was her choice. I couldn't force her to be a good person. "What are you thinking about?" Evelyn asked one evening, noticing my pensiveness. "About how strange life is. Sometimes you lose something important, but in return, you get something even more important." "And what did you get in return?" "You," I replied simply. She smiled and took my hand in hers, and I got a second chance at happiness. The trial took place in early December. Darlene and Rex never admitted guilt, continuing to claim that it was all a family quarrel that had been blown up into a criminal case. But the evidence was too convincing. The judge, an elderly man with a gray beard, listened to all sides and handed down the sentence. 8 months probation for each of the defendants, a fine of $2,000, and compensation for the victim in the amount of $1,500. "A suspended sentence means that if you reoffend, you will go to prison," said the judge. "I hope this lesson will be of benefit to you." As we left the courtroom, Darlene shot me a look full of hatred. "Are you happy?" she asked. "No, I'm not," I replied honestly. "I'm sorry it turned out this way." "Liar! You wanted to punish us. I wanted to protect an innocent person." "Well, you did. Now you have a new family and you don't need your old one." "Darlene, if you ever want to make up—" "Never," she snapped. "You no longer exist to me." She left, and I realized that I was seeing her for the last time. That evening, Evelyn and I sat at home, drinking tea and talking about the future. Outside the window, it was snowing, the first snow of the year. "Do you regret how things turned out?" she asked. No, I did the right thing. And if I had to choose again, I would do the same. What will happen to us now? What do you want to happen? I want us to be together. Forever. Then we will be, I said, and kissed her. Snow continued to fall outside, covering old wounds and resentments with a white blanket. A new life had begun, and I was ready for it.